Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to the Bridging Principles webinar. My name is Leah Taylor, and I'm going to be your presenter today. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar will take approximately 45 minutes of your time, and that will include an opportunity for questions at the end. Everyone is currently muted, other than myself, just to make sure there's no accidental interruptions. And if you do have any questions, please just take a look. You'll see at the bottom of your screen there is a chat box. If you click on that, sometimes you need to bring your cursor all the way down to the bottom of your screen for it to pop up. But if you click on that, what will happen is a chat box will occur and you will be able to answer or write any questions that you have for me while I'm delivering the presentation. And then at the end of the webinar today, I will do my best to answer all of them. Okay, so let's get started. So just to start a little bit with who I am and why I'm presenting today, my name is Leah. And I am the very lucky CEO for the Bridging Principles. I'm also the lead master facilitator for our programs, which means I am responsible for designing our training programs, and I also make sure that all of our other master facilitators are delivering really quality events for all of our clients. I am from Canada originally. I grew up in Woodville, Ontario, a very small little town in rural Ontario, but I actually now live in the United States, in Georgia, as a professor of cultural anthropology, where I spend a lot of my time working with students, teaching them about the importance of other cultures, learning about them, why we should respect them, and what we can gain by learning from other cultural values and knowledge. So a lot of you that participate in these webinars, I believe, are from Canada. And so I think it's important to state that I love Canada. It's still my country of birth. I'm very proud to be from there, but I am not very good with the cold. So that's why I found myself living in the South and working in Georgia. However, I do love to make trips back up to Canada for the Bridging Principles trainings and, of course, to visit my friends and family and enjoy the beautiful nature that I do miss a lot living down here, all the good camping and fun things like that. So in terms of my background, I am someone, I've had a fair number of overseas travel and work experiences in places like Southern Africa, Europe, the United States is a cross-cultural experience for me, Peru and Jamaica. And having experienced a lot of different challenges working across cultures and some of the beauty of working across cultures, this is why the Bridging Principles are so close to my heart, because they really help to teach people from many different backgrounds simple, concrete tools for communicating with each other in an effective way that helps everyone work better together. And the results of better communication really is that we can actually better reach our own personal and professional goals, and we can do that without burning any bridges, without hurting people's feelings, without accidentally offending others simply because we just didn't understand the different cultural viewpoint that they were coming to the table with. And so I'm so excited to have this opportunity to share with you about these principles today. I have three key intentions that I'm hoping to achieve for our time together throughout this webinar. The first is I'm going to share with you about why there is such a business imperative today for understanding and embracing diversity and learning how to build effective and safe cross-cultural relationships. That's going to be a big part of our time together. Secondly, I'm going to share with you some key cross-cultural building tips and tools that are a good starting point or foundation when you're looking about how to achieve your personal and professional goals in cross-cultural relationship building or relationship building with people from diverse backgrounds. And lastly, it's an opportunity for you to kind of spend some more time considering your professional goals and how the Bridging Principles training programs can help you to do that. At the end of the presentation, I will be making a very special offer just for people participating in this webinar with regards to an opportunity for our training program. So please stay tuned for that. I'll be sharing with you at the very end. So let's start with the basics. What are the Bridging Principles? In a nutshell, they are 5 simple but very powerful teachings of respect and understanding that can help open doors for you to work with people from all walks of life anywhere in the world. They are cross-cultural principles, and what that means is that you can actually find them being used and working in any culture anywhere in the world. This is something that, as an anthropologist, I think it's important to point out is really amazing and remarkable, because as humans, we actually have so many things that make us different from each other, so many different ideas about the world and how to live in it, that when you find something that we can all hold in common, I think that's very, very powerful, especially in this day and age. Another thing that we hold in common and is essential and underpins all of the work that we do in trying to build relationships with others is to remember that all people, no matter where they are, want to feel safe. All people want to achieve their goals. And at the end of our day, every single one of us wants to be able to go home to our families, to Netflix, to our dogs, whatever it is that we're looking forward to and is sacred to us at the end of the day, and know that we did our job well, that we built positive relationships with others, and that we're reaching our intentions in our life. And this is why I talk about these principles as tools for cultural safety. Cultural safety goes beyond just being competent or sensitive to other cultures to focusing on ensuring that you and the people you're working with are feeling safe. They're feeling comfortable in building relationships with each other, and they can do that knowing that at the end of the day, they can go home to their regular life and feel good about who they are and the relationships that they're building as well. These bridging principles are quickly emerging as a best practice for cross-cultural communication, and they're currently being shared with the world in Canada, obviously, the United States, New Zealand, Australia, Chile, Guatemala, Israel, and Spain. And it continues to grow and expand as more people learn about them and start to incorporate them in their lives and train others. It's important to note here that these principles are really great for business. They're great for your professional life, which is the focus of the webinar today. But I know that once you participate in one of our training programs and you learn the actual 5 principles, you will see that they are also incredibly helpful in your personal daily life as well. Participants of our programs have reported a lot of improvements in their relationships with their coworkers, their children, their spouses. Just even when they go on vacation, they can have a better time. And I can definitely attest to that in my own life. I use them every day, not just professionally, but definitely personally. So now that you know what the principles are, just briefly, what do we do with them? So I've alluded to the fact that we deliver training programs. That is the key focus of our organization. Is we work with organizations like yours to deliver these programs to your staff, your board, your stakeholders, with the intent of helping them to learn and get excited about these bridging principles and feel confident in actually being able to apply them. And so our training programs are always based on real life stories and examples. They're highly interactive and they involve a lot of experiential learning. So it's not just listening to me talk, which is what you're going to be doing today. It's a lot more interaction and actually practicing the principles so that people can build that competence and confidence and feel safe to actually go out and use them. We're going to be talking a little bit more about our training programs in detail towards the end of this presentation, but just to give you a sense of what we do, this is the main focus of our organization, is training others in these principles to help them become a part of their daily life and improve the way that they work with others. I'd like to share with you now my perspective from the anthropological, cultural point of view, why I am so passionate about these principles and why I think they are needed more today than at any other point in history. Business is now global. It's global whether you are working with your neighbor next door or you're going overseas or traveling to another country to work. In contrast, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, most people lived and worked beside other people from the same cultural and religious backgrounds as themselves. And usually they would not leave their town, or if they did, they would move not very far away. So everybody in their world was essentially, or had enough cultural similarities that there wasn't this need that we have now to try and understand each other and these differences and work from them. In contrast, today, Canada is one of the most culturally diverse countries in the world, and I think it's reflecting more and more of what's happening all over the globe. In Canada, for example, you have more than 700 unique First Nations, Inuit, and Métis groups. And a lot of the time, these groups tend to get lumped into one group, which we call Indigenous people. However, each one of them has their own unique culture and history, and then within those communities, you have families that have their own unique cultures, and then you have individuals who bring their own very unique life circumstances and experiences to the table. Nobody is exactly the same. No two people are the same. We also have 200,000 immigrants arriving here yearly from around the world. 26% of the population has a mixed ethnic background, which means that their parents or their families have at least 2 or more different cultural backgrounds and influences that they are incorporating into themselves and the way that they view the world and work within it. And that doesn't even count for all of the different religious belief systems or worldviews that exist in Canada, let alone the rest of the globe, and the fact that we are now in a world where we can work across borders so easily. So we really live in an age where we can't afford to assume that all the people we meet and work with will have the same beliefs, values, or ideas as us. And we also can't afford to be too afraid to try and build that bridge with someone who seems so different from us that we just don't know where to start, because we need to have those relationships and work across those differences and find the commonalities so that all people can feel respected and safe in achieving whatever outcomes it is that you're looking for. And this is really an amazing moment in history. It's exciting. It's brought with it new opportunities for really amazing, productive, and professional relationships and collaboration between people of different cultural origins, where we can learn from each other and enhance what we're doing, get better at what we're doing, create a more peaceful world. But what we see, the flip side of that, is that it's also led to increased global, but also really in our own daily lives, local conflicts. You have more and more people who are afraid of each other, that know very little about each other based on what they see on TV or what they read in the newspaper. And this creates negative stereotypes, and sometimes really deep feelings of mistrust can emerge between these different groups, where people feel threatened by each other. And when you feel threatened and afraid, you're not reaching that place of cultural safety that we talked about earlier. So again, every individual, in my humble perspective, needs to learn how to work with others and how to come to understanding with others about who they are and what their beliefs are and what makes them feel safe and like they've had a good day at the end of the day. And when we do this, we can have more peaceful and productive relationships. And when we have more peaceful and productive relationships, we reach our goals much easier and in a happier way. So in our training programs, we really like to share that these bridging principles are globally understandable language, because they are principles that are cross-cultural, that you see in every different culture around the world being used. And what we're doing is we're bringing consciousness to them, and we're thinking about how to use these principles every day with each other, and so that we can respect our differences and work together for that mutual success. So going from the global level to thinking about what does this mean in the workplace? Well, there are a lot of different barriers to healthy, diverse workplaces. There's also a lot of benefits to having diversity in the workplace, but we need to overcome those barriers first. There was a study that was done in 2012 called Managing Workplace Diversity, and it identified 4 key barriers to having a healthy workplace for people from diverse backgrounds. The first major barrier is this concept called ethnocentrism. And if you haven't heard of that before, ethnocentrism is a very simple concept that basically means that people have a tendency to believe that their culture, their way of doing things, their perspective is the right one and is better than anybody else's. And I laugh about this because it's a very human thing to do. It's something that we as humans often do. And it is a huge barrier in learning from and humbling ourselves to understand that we can gain from other people's perspectives and we can do things in possibly a different way. And there is value in learning about each other and how we do things differently. But if we don't have that training and that perspective and noticing when we tend to be ethnocentric, then the result often is stereotyping, discrimination, and harassment, which are the 3 other major barriers that you see. And if there's stereotyping, discrimination, and harassment happening, you do not have a healthy workplace, you do not have a safe work environment, and maybe your clients and your customers aren't feeling safe either. So these are workplace-related reasons for why it's so important to consider how to work across cultures and with diverse groups of people in a safe, comfortable, and productive manner. So I'll just leave you with this quote when thinking about why cross-cultural safety is so important. The Dalai Lama says, quote, "Our success as individuals, as communities, businesses, and humankind rests upon us finding ways to cooperate with one another in a spirit of mutual acceptance and respect." This quote hits home to me so deeply, because I think that is exactly the key. That if we are going to work together effectively and respectfully and peacefully in this new global age where we have so many different people interacting and working together, we have to find that place of mutual acceptance and respect. And to do that, we need to learn and value each other's differences. And it really is a key ingredient for success in today's multicultural marketplace, to be able to work effectively with people from all different backgrounds and to come from that place of understanding and knowing that need for cultural safety. And this is what the Bridging Principles helps us to do. It gives us a really simple process that is so powerful, because it helps to guide us on how we can better cooperate with one another in that respectful way, in a way that helps everybody to feel safe and like what they are bringing is valuable to the table. And then that's what gets us to our goals. That's what helps us achieve them. So now I'd like you to take this from the global level to the workplace level to your own personal life experiences. What challenges do you face? I think all of us have challenges in relationships at different times in our lives. Maybe you have a personal challenge that you've faced or are facing with building an effective cross-cultural relationship. Maybe it's professional. Maybe you've heard stories. Maybe you know somebody else who's struggling. But I'd just like you to take a moment and think about for yourself, what brought you here today? What is the challenge that you're looking to help address? How do you want things to be more culturally safe in your working relationships? What would that look like? So just take a moment and think about it. And if you come up with something, you can just write it down and keep it for yourself for further conversations with us. We'll definitely bring it back up and talk more with you about that. So I'm going to read a list here just of some potential applications or scenarios that maybe you just thought of for yourself, and maybe some areas where you didn't really think at first that you could use these principles, but you definitely can. So the first is, maybe when you were thinking about a challenge you're having is you've been struggling to build a new business partnership where you want to collaborate with another organization or another group, and for some reason it's just not jiving, it's not happening the way you expect it to. That's a place where you can definitely use these principles. Another is rebuilding a damaged relationship. Sometimes things don't go the way we expect, and that distrust comes into play. There have been stereotyping issues or things like that. These principles can kind of bring everybody back to the table in a safe, calm place and address them so that everyone can leave it feeling a little bit safer and moving more towards a positive relationship. Another example could be that you are having trouble turning your prospects into actual clients and you can't figure out what the gap is. Well, these principles can help you think about it from the client's point of view. What is it that you need to learn from them to be better at servicing them? Perhaps you're trying to create meaningful consultation with project stakeholders. That's something that we do a lot in the nonprofit world, but also in the corporate world if you're trying to work in a specific community and you need to better understand what their needs are in order to have that project be effective and approved, something that definitely can be useful in this area. Or you're just experiencing conflict with coworkers. Who hasn't had that happen to them? We all struggle sometimes in that area. And last but not least, I think something we can definitely all relate to is that feeling of moving to a new place. Maybe it's your first day at a new job, your first day in a new town, your first day going to school when you were a little kid. How did you feel in that moment? It's a bit of a scary thing. You don't know where you are 100%. You don't know who's there. And this is when you really need principles to help you feel safe and to help guide you in how to move through this new space in a way that's respectful to the people that are already there, but also keeps you safe. So these are just a few examples of different ways you can apply the bridging principles in your life, professionally, but also personally. In terms of how they're currently being used, this is just a brief list to give you an idea. In Finland, they are being used to help support the refugee process. They've been incorporated into the interview process for asylum seekers in that country. And as we all know, there's a huge influx of Syrian refugees, so this has become particularly pertinent for that community in that country. It's also being used to help with youth facing addictions and youth suicide issues. So it's a very unique application, but it's looking at how can we help these youth feel safe and work more effectively with them, understanding their unique cultural and reality viewpoint that is different from ours per se. In Spain, they're starting to be used with training corporations and for their employees to create a better culture of respect and a safe workplace for all people from different backgrounds. And it's also being used just in individual consultation with professionals to help them problem solve their own goals. So that's also an opportunity that can occur with the bridging principles. In New Zealand, what we found is really cool is that these principles are finding just as much traction with kids as they are with somebody who's 45 as they are with somebody who's 80. So they're actually being used by a group in New Zealand to help improve family communications and help children learn how to communicate better about what they need to feel safe, and also how to respond and be more effective and respectful with other people. They're also being used in New Zealand to help assist Maori women who have not currently been in the workplace transition to entering the workforce and staying there successfully full time. And last but not least, in Canada, a big focus is building better relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in business relationship building. So these are just a few examples of how they're currently being used. So now we're at the point in the presentation where I get to share with you some of the key tips and tools that are foundational to our programs when we deliver the Alexis or the Bridging Principles training program. And I know that they will really help you in your everyday interactions to communicate more effectively and to reach your goals in a safe and simple way. So the first thing you need to be aware of is that every community or business has its own culture. Doing business with partners, clients, and coworkers is like building a bridge between the culture that is yours and the culture that you want to work with, or the individual that you want to work with. And so if you imagine that you are looking at a river, your side of the riverbank is your culture, it's your way of doing things, it's your house, it's your office, it's your community, it's your country. And when you're on your side of the riverbank, you are a host. If someone comes to visit you, then you are hosting them. When you cross to the other side of the riverbank, you are a visitor to somebody else's cultural space. It's not your own, and you need to learn how to behave respectfully in order to do business well with them. So how do we cross safely to the other side of the river? How do we build the bridge to work together in a way that will be respectful of both sides of the unique ways of that riverbank? And how do we host visitors on our side of the riverbank that will help them to understand the rules of how we do things and feel safe and comfortable in a new environment, so much so that they're actually going to want to come back to work with us? This is a simple but powerful idea of hosting and visiting, and it's important because as humans, we have this tendency to operate most of the time from a very naive, realist idea that everybody's like us, or if they're not like us, they're completely different, and it may even just be impossible to work with them. So these are the two sort of default modes that we go into. And when we come from this point of view, it makes it really easy to accidentally or intentionally offend each other. And this is because we're making judgments of other people and other groups' actions based on our own cultural values and ideas of what respectful behavior looks like when we are on our side of the riverbank, not considering what does that look like and feel like from their point of view on their side of the riverbank. So the bridging principles really help us to consciously talk about and share how to be respectful and how to communicate with each other in a way that builds the bridge so that both sides can feel safe. You can reduce that anxiety of worrying about, am I doing the right thing right now? Am I offended anyone? And you can help to build those trusting, respectful relationships. So this river metaphor is a foundation, like I said earlier, that underlies all of our training programs where we introduce these 5 principles for successful cross-cultural communication. And before attending any one of our programs, we teach you about just this basic concept. When am I a visitor on someone else's riverbank? And when am I a host? If you start just practicing and thinking about that in your daily life, it'll cause you to stop, especially when you're walking through a doorway or you're exiting a building or moving through your day-to-day life. Just ask yourself, am I a visitor right now or am I a host? And how does that change your behavior? Just that simple awareness. How does it make you look at the world around you a little bit differently and think about the way that you're acting, and maybe you need more guidance on how to be respectful in that place, or maybe you need to be a better guide for the people who are visiting you. So when you are a visitor and you're crossing the river, First of all, it takes courage to cross the river sometimes, especially if we do know that there are differences and we don't know what all of them are yet. So remember to be courageous. That's great. It's good that you're doing it, but also be humble. In some cultures, from some perspectives, it's scary to ask questions. It's scary to appear like you don't know everything already when you visit somebody else's riverbank. But in actual fact, if you ask questions, you're not going to make those naive assumptions about how to do things on someone else's riverbank. And it's perceived as a sign of respect that you actually care about how to do things in a way that makes people feel comfortable and safe in their own home or in their own office or in their own country, their own culture, community, etc. On the flip side, when you are hosting, ask yourself this: am I doing all I need to ensure that this person or these group of people that is new to my riverbank knows what they need to do in order to feel comfortable and safe working with me, and to demonstrate that they understand and respect that this is a place that is important and special to me because it's my side of the riverbank. Everybody has a place that's important or special to them in that way. And just this simple metaphor of the river, for me personally, has changed the way that I do business on a daily basis, because I'm asking myself all the time, am I being a good host right now? So my job in this webinar is to be a good host, to clearly communicate to you my intentions for the webinar, to achieve those intentions in a clear and hopefully friendly way, and to leave you feeling like you got something out of this experience. And you're all being great visitors, and because nobody's interrupting me, but I also created a space that wouldn't happen because I've muted everyone and you can ask questions via the chat box. And I made all of those things clear right at the beginning. So that's just one example of how I use it. I use it in every day. Even when I go visit my in-laws' house, believe me, it's important to remember I'm a visitor in that circumstance. So what happens when we don't act as good hosts or good visitors? All of us have experienced that, or experienced somebody not being a very good host or being a good visitor with us. So when you disrespect someone else's riverbank, whether it's accidental or intentional, let's hope that it's mostly accidental, the first thing that's going to happen or occur is misunderstanding. If you don't create clarity about who you are, why you're there, what's important to you, why are you working with this person or with this group, you're not going to have the same picture of what you want together and how does that look and feel. And when you don't have a clear picture of that, you haven't created that time to create that safe place and culturally safe communication space, the result can be things like broken trust, where you have totally different perspectives about what was supposed to happen or who was supposed to do what or what's appropriate or not appropriate. And so you can't trust each other. And we all know that when you don't trust the people you're trying to work with, you're not going to have the outcomes that you're looking for. And when you don't have the outcomes that you're looking for, that can result in completely failed projects or failed business ventures. So it's really in our interest to take that perspective of humbleness and thinking about from the very beginning, how can I be a good visitor if I'm on someone else's cultural riverbank? Or how can I be a good host? And if you do that from the beginning, you're going to build trust very quickly in comparison to if you are walking into a situation where there's already a lot of a legacy of distrust or things that have happened in the past that you're trying to work through. The bridging principles can really help you to address those issues as well. But it's always best if we can come from that place right from the beginning. If we can't, then we go back to those basic building blocks of the principles and work together to figure it out. So the good news is you can use the bridging principles to do both. And I personally do that myself. Whenever I'm building a new relationship, I'm always thinking about what does it mean to be, am I hosting in this scenario? Am I visiting? How can I be guided by this person to treat them with respect? I'm considering all of the principles in combination with how to work best together with this individual or with this group. But I also use it daily to problem solve. My coworkers will tell you that I use the principles all the time, and I even humbly admit when I forget to use them because I'm a human and I do. And usually when there's an issue, it allows me to see it from that lens. And instead of blaming other people or blaming myself, I can just say, oh, this is where I went wrong. This is the principle I forgot, and look at it from that perspective and try and resolve the issue in that way. Another thing that I think is important when thinking about cultural diversity is just understanding what culture is. So in effective business relationship building or just relationship building period, I think it's a basic thing to say, but it's still important to state it. You need to learn how to abide by the cultural protocols of the group or the individual you want to work with. And you also need to learn how to guide others about your culture and how you work and what respect feels and looks like to you. So when you are learning about a new culture, there are two parts to consider. The first part is what we call know what culture. And know what culture is the tip of the iceberg of culture. It's very, very easily visible. These are the things that you could know just by doing a quick Google search, by reading about a culture in the book. You could learn about their language, their values, where they're located on the planet, what are their social customs, what are their histories. This is what a lot of cross-cultural awareness training workshops focus on. And it's a really good start because, for example, if you're applying for a job, most of us these days are going to go to the website before we go to an interview so that we can look like we have an idea of what they're doing and what ways we can help them to improve upon that. However, just focusing on the know what of culture, as I'm sure you can tell from this image, is really only looking at the tip of the iceberg. And if you're familiar with the story of the Titanic, which was a giant ship that unfortunately sunk in the middle of the ocean, it's because it didn't really see that there was an iceberg in the first place. And if it did, it only saw a little bit of the top of it and had no idea that there was this huge piece underneath that was going to sink the ship. And this is just like culture. If we think we already know everything because we've done our homework and we've done lots of reading beforehand, we've got that know what stuff down, it's very possible we're going to sink our own ship in building that relationship because we've forgotten the know how. So the majority of culture is actually under the surface. You can't prepare for it in advance. It's always changing. And people within cultures are always changing. And this is the part of culture that is experiential and is not always easy to talk about right away or to read about in advance. So every cultural community is unique. Every cultural community and individual should be approached as such. No two businesses are the same. No two people are the same. No two clients are the same. There can be similarities, which you could probably find out by doing a little bit of reading, but there are always differences and you can't account for those in advance. This is why you just can't live from the point of view of assumptions and think your homework is done once you've done that reading. You've got to learn what's happening under the surface, and that's the part that's hard to predict, and that's why being a good visitor or being a good host is so important, because you're asking the right questions and you're using these tools and these principles to build that relationship and learn what is under the surface. And so the bridging principles really focus on the know-how, and it does that by giving you 5 simple principles that you can use to, in every day, navigate new cultural landscapes or working with new people in a way that helps you feel safe enough to try and build that bridge, but also helps the other person understand that your intentions are good and your intentions are to learn how to work with them in a respectful and safe way. And so this is the real shift that we do. We move beyond just cultural awareness, which is a really great start, to future-oriented, in the moment, how am I going to work with people that are right here, right now in front of me that, do not just get perfectly represented from a history text or a Google search. So I'd like to share with you now briefly an example of how I use the bridging principles to resolve a long-standing conflict in my own work life and achieve my goals. I'm not going to be utilizing any names in this example simply out of respect for the privacy of the individuals involved and the organization that I was contracting with. This is from one of my contracts in the United States. Essentially, what I was tasked to do was to help create and promote an outreach program for a vulnerable population of individuals. This group of individuals has been historically very mistreated and frequently does not trust the public or government interventions or any kind of government program for any reason whatsoever because of this history. And so the outreach program that we were in the process of developing was definitely needed by the population. There was clear evidence of that, but there was such a huge gap of mistrust between the people who wanted to deliver this program and the audience it was intended for that nobody was signing up to participate. It was just a complete ghost town. So what I did was I brought the bridging principles to the table, and I was able to reach some key decision makers in the community of this vulnerable population, share with them the intentions of the program, and work with them to rebuild that trust. And most importantly, what the bridging principles helped me to do was to receive that effective guidance on how to design the program, but also how to promote the program in a way that would be welcoming to the people who were initially scared off by it or wouldn't have even considered it if I hadn't have taken that time to build that bridge. And I use these principles really to help our team overall come up with a strategy to rebuild that trust and rebuild a bridge where before there had been a huge chasm of mistrust between the two sides. And now I'm really happy to report that the same program has a wait list of individuals who want to participate every year. Another brief example would be the successes of I Do Business. So very briefly here, the Bridging Principles is a business division of the organization I Do Business. And I Do Business is a social purpose business that focuses on providing people with the training and supports they need to access the knowledge, skills, and resources to grow good businesses, and focuses a lot on entrepreneurship. And so, of course, being the umbrella organization for the Bridging Principles, I Do Business focuses a lot on incorporating the Bridging Principles into all that we do. And it's been really, really helpful in achieving some of our key goals. So a lot of our work as I Do Business requires partnership building with Indigenous communities, with nonprofit organizations, corporations, government agencies, funders, you name it. We're relationship building all the time. And these principles have been really helpful in helping us to build those relationships in the public and the private sector, and with more than 1,000 individuals who have now received training and support from us since 2013. So I'm very proud to report that that's a real success story for us. In considering for yourself what might be the benefits of the Bridging Principles, I'm just going to name a few for you here to think about. The first is it helps you to build those strong relationships with communities you work with, which is what I mentioned in my own example, recently working in the United States. It helps you to increase your ability to recruit and retain a diverse workforce. It helps you to avoid or resolve conflicts. I use it in this way on a daily basis in my own life. And it can really help you to reach your clients, to think about it from their point of view. What is their riverbank? What does the riverbank of your client look like? And how can you better respect that riverbank and make your riverbank that you want them to visit feel welcoming and comfortable for them and easy for them to understand? And most importantly, I think, like I said at the very beginning, all of us want to feel safe and comfortable and know we did our job well at the end of the day and built positive relationships. These principles have been just a breath of fresh air for me because they help me to reduce any of that stress or fear. They increase that comfort or confidence when building new relationships. And it just generally leaves me with that good feeling at the end of the day that I know I'm doing my best to build a more peaceful, collaborative, and safe world for people from all backgrounds. So that's a really cool benefit. This is just a quick testimonial from Bob Martin of Nuco Brothers Limited, which is a waste management company that participated in our training recently. He was really happy with the results, and he says, quote, "For every meeting and interaction, the Bridging Principles make the difference for me in ensuring a clear intent and positive outcomes. In the short few weeks that I've been using the Bridging Principles, I've already saved tons of time and money." So that's the cool thing, is that they're not just a feel-good set of principles. They do also have concrete outcomes and results, like saving time, like getting to the business table faster, like helping your clients to feel safe and comfortable with you. Those are tangible things that make your life better and make the people that you work with have a better experience as well. So I'd like to just finish off our presentation today by talking with you briefly about the programs that we offer. We have the one-day seminar, a comprehensive program which is about 27 hours and includes in-person, webinar, and online independent work. We have customized options if those two options don't work for your organization, and we also have the Master Facilitator program, where if you are interested in actually training other people in the Bridging Principles, we are growing and expanding into new areas. So we're always interested in working with people who have the right skill set and values who would like to do that with us. So I'm going to describe for you both the one-day experience and the comprehensive program. So for the one-day experience, what we do is in the morning we focus on just starting with the basics. What is the role of culture in doing good business and having better professional relationships, and what is cultural safety and why do we need it? Starting from that point of view, then we can introduce the story of the riverbank and then teach the 5 principles. What are the Bridging Principles? How are they used across cultures? And we get people to come up with their own examples in their own life of what this looks like and how they could use it. The afternoon is my favorite part of the one-day experience because that's where we get people up and moving around and having a lot of fun. That's what I'm so proud of about the way that we do things, is that it's a fun experience. It's not boring. It's not sitting there and just taking notes. It's actually living and breathing the bridging principles and getting comfortable and confident with using them. And once we've achieved that through the afternoon activity, then we have people develop their own personal practice plans. So how am I going to take these tools and I'm going to apply them into my work life, my personal life, whatever aspects are relevant and important for them that they'd like to work on. We also have the comprehensive program. The comprehensive program is focused now not just on getting individuals competent and confident with using the bridging principles, but having your organization improve its overall capacity to build culturally safe and productive relationships. So it's moving from the individual staff members or board members that you'd want trained and getting them trained, but also then addressing and tackling particular organizational problems or goals that you have through the lens of the bridging principles. So the first module is the business imperative for embracing diversity, and that is an online independent module that's focused on getting a sense of where you're at, each of you individually, with understanding diversity. What is it? Why does it matter? How do we need to respect it? It gives you that really strong foundation to start with. Then the second module is a variation of the one-day training program. So we get people introduced fully to the concept of culture. What are the bridging principles? How are they cross-culturally relevant? And then get everybody to practice them and get comfortable with them. The third module is where everybody goes home or back to their workplace and starts integrating the bridging principles into employee daily work practices. And this is based on e-learning. It's about 10 hours of time. The good thing about it is that it's addressing specific workplace issues. So most of it is just about awareness of the bridging principles and thinking about them while you're doing your daily work, and then a little bit of journaling and reflection on how that changes the outcomes of what you're doing and what you're learning from that experience. And then we cap off the entire experience with Module 4, which is the most exciting. Now you've got everybody understanding what diversity is, what culture is, how to use the bridging principles in their own individual work life and also their personal life. And you move to, okay, we've got a good grasp of this. How are we going to apply the bridging principles to improve our organization's practices and achieve our organizational goals or address organizational issues? So this is where we all come back together in person or via webinar. It's something we discuss with each client that we work with, what works best for you. And we work together through the lens of the bridging principles to tackle those specific issues and create an organizational culture that lives and breathes these principles. So I love the comprehensive program. I think the results of it are really tangible and long-term for an organization. So we are technically at the end of the presentation here. I'm just going to ask questions or see if there are any questions asked in a moment. I want to thank you all so very much for being excellent participants in the webinar for the bridging principles today. This is a very general overview, but I hope that I gave you at least a couple of key tools or different ways of thinking about working across cultures that you can start to utilize immediately in your own life. So don't forget, when are you a visitor? When are you a host? Be humble, ask questions. Culture is about knowing how, not just knowing what. So those are the things I hope that you will leave with today. And please know that someone on our team will be following up with you very soon to discuss how we can work with you to see what's relevant and needed by your organization to help you apply these principles in your work life. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we do have a special offer for participating in our webinar today. If you register for a Bridging Principles training program with us before May 31st, so you've got a little bit over a month here, we will be able to give you a 10% discount on your very first training experience. So when you speak with one of our representatives, just make sure that you note that you participated in the webinar, that you're booking it before the 31st. And by booking, I don't mean that it has to be scheduled to actually be delivered. I just mean that we are going to pick a time in 2016 to do it together, and then we can honor that special offer for you. So now we're at my favorite part of the presentation because I get to stop talking and start seeing what people are saying. Does anybody have any questions for me at this point? Okay, I've got a question from KM, how many people can participate in a training? That is a great question. We can accommodate anywhere from, typically we usually do about 8 people, all the way to 150. We can also do individual customized options if you just have a couple of people that would like to receive this training. We always like to work with what makes sense on your riverbank and making it reasonable and feasible for you. So we can do all of those different options. If we have larger numbers, then we may need to bring in multiple master facilitators to do it. That would be the only major difference. Oh, getting lots of questions here. From John, does this training qualify for the Ontario Job Grant? Yes, it does, and we have been successful in obtaining that grant for our clients. And what we actually do for the Ontario Job Grant is we help the organization to apply for that funding. So you can get up to 5/6 of the funding cost covered, depending on what kind of an organization you are and how much or how many clients you have, or how many employees, sorry. Got another question from KM. What kind of space and equipment is required for the training? Again, it depends on the size. So if it's a smaller group, a boardroom usually does very, very well. And we just need the basic things like a projector, some speakers. If it's a larger room, a microphone, and enough room for people to break out into small groups. And Kim's asking me, how much is the training? That's a great question, Kim. That's something that we do individually with each organization, depending on what specifically you are looking for and what's going to work on your cultural riverbank. We always customize our offerings to meet what you're looking for, so we can talk about that individually. Are there any other questions? Oh, interesting. Okay, so we have someone interested in the Master Facilitator training cost by Connie. That's great to hear, Connie. That will depend on whether it's an in-house Master Facilitator program, which would be somebody who would be trained to be a Master Facilitator and then continue to deliver it over the years to their own staff and stakeholders, or if you're looking at it as a business opportunity, which is also an option. So I would love to have a conversation with you personally about that, if that's okay. Any other questions? Wonderful, Connie, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for being an excellent audience, and thank you, John, for your questions. Oh, one more. Is the Master Facilitator training eligible for the grant? JT, are you referring to the Ontario Job Grant? Yes, yes, it is. So it is definitely eligible for that. In fact, it's one of the better options for the job grants because they like to see things that result in significant change in the role of an individual in the workplace. Awesome. Thank you, JT. Thank you, everyone, so much for your time today. I hope this was useful, and I really enjoyed hosting you on my side of the riverbank. Please have a beautiful rest of your day, and we will be in touch with you soon. Thank you very much. Oh, I've got one more question. Do you have to do the master training through an organization? No, Connie, you don't. So there are, like I said, there's 2 options. One of them is individuals who want to become licensed master facilitators and make it their own business or a part of an existing business. And we can definitely work with individuals to do that. Or there are those organizations that say, you know what, we'd like to be able to train this on an ongoing basis for our staff and for our board of directors. And then that organization pays somebody on staff to become an in-house facilitator. So those are 2 totally different options. Does that answer your question okay? Absolutely, Connie, I'd be pleased to. Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you everybody for your time today. I look forward to following up with you, Connie, and for those of you who are also involved, you will hear from one of us shortly in the next couple of days. Have a beautiful rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.